I've lived 1,000 lives. I've piloted 1,000 souls. I've killed and fought and died just for another role.
This is the Happy Jacks RPG podcast, a roundtable discussion that's a mix of friendship, humor, unbridled enthusiasm, and tabletop RPG topics sent in from around the world.
Just for another role.
Wow.
Hello,
Hello.
and welcome to Happy Jacks RPG podcast, season 33, episode 3. My name is Kimmy.
I'm Kurt.
I'm Kadave.
And I'm Mo.
And in today's episode, the hosts are going to recap the best games they played this year. Not the best, but like new to them. Like great new games that they've played this year. Ken from Canada asks how to handle in-game misogyny with women at the table. And Kurt, not Potts, wants advice on turning off GM brain when you are a player. If you'd like to contribute a question or topic to the show, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. And announcements. Our next game days is going to be Saturday, January 13th. I think there are already like 6 games posted, and I think like almost all of them are full already.
Uh-oh.
It's going to be
I better post
a banger.
game.
It's going to be awesome. So if you want to join on that, you can go to happyjacks.org/discord. And if you want to see it, if you go to the website, happyjacks.org/communitygames, you can actually see there's like a list of them on from the Google Calendar of all the games that are scheduled so far. Please keep in mind that the times posted there are Pacific time, so please be aware. Unfortunately, Google doesn't do a cool thing where it like translates it to
Localizes,
your
yeah.
local. Yeah, unfortunately. So keep in mind. But there's a whole bunch of games, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more because we still have like a month, so it's very exciting. Also, heads up, the next 2 episodes we'll be back recording on Fridays because the Sundays ended up on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve.
His idea was Sunday.
Yeah. So we aren't going to be recording on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. So we are recording on Fridays instead. happyjacks.org/schedule if you want to check it out. So slight schedule change for the next 2 weeks. I'm also off of school, so it's not quite so stressful because like between the getting home from work with the child and like in less than 2 hours getting her all ready for bed and everything ready and then getting ready to do the podcast, Fridays used to be stressful, but it should be fine. Okay, cool. So our indie designer of the month for December is this cool cat named Kurt Potts. Who's
Who,
here
me?
with us. It's you. And you can find his work at Kurt Potts. That's KurtPotts.itch.io. At Kurt Potts, spelled the same way, on Twitter and other places. And the game we're talking about this week is actually an adventure. It's not like a system into itself. And it's called One Last Good Day. And it's a cinematic adventure about a group of college students who are visited by the ghost of an old friend in need of help. They have to show him one last good day before the sun rises, or he'll be stuck as a ghost forever. To help the ghost pass on, the characters will need to help him understand and overcome the things he regrets from his life. This takes the characters will need to help him understand and overcome things. Okay, let's try this again. To help this ghost pass on, the characters will need to help him understand and overcome things he regrets from his life. This takes the characters on a Ferris Bueller's Day Off style romp through the ghost's fears, missed opportunities, and possibly their biggest regret of all, not saying goodbye. It's a 16-page, fully illustrated modern fantasy adventure about a ghost who needs help, with full cover and NPC character art by the fantastic Minerva Fox,
Yay!
friend of the pod. And the adventure is written to be played with the lighthearted RPG, but can be played with most modern fantasy games with few or no changes. And all proceeds from it from One Last Day will be donated to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's right now, it's $5 at kurtpotts.itch.io. So this is really neat, Kurt, because it's actually an adventure, and it's actually, and not that I steal from you, but I kind of steal from you. When I have to write adventures for things, I actually look at One Last Good Day as like the pattern of how I lay out adventures now. Because it's
Oh, thank you.
yeah, it's amazing. Like it's so well laid out and thought out, the way you have like each beat of the story and then the possible solutions for it is just so like concise but well done and thoughtful. So literally it's like, okay, someone asked me to write this adventure for this Kickstarter of theirs and something else. And I don't steal the content, but I was like, okay, let's see. Bring up One Last Good Day. How did Kurt lay it out? Okay, it's just how I'll write it out. And usually, like, they sometimes change it, but it's like my go-to format now for all adventures because it's so well done.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the structure of the adventure is probably the thing I'm most proud of about it. It had sort of a tragic origin. It's a very personal story for me. I lost my son a couple of years ago, and this was sort of, some people journal and I write RPGs. So I sat down and wrote this adventure as a way to sort of process that loss. But the structure that came out of that actually ended up being really good for if you want a linear story, because there's no instances of this happened and then this happened and then this happened. Everything is this happened because that happened, and but this happened. It sort of pushes you to learn more about this character and what they don't understand, and help them process the loss of their regrets and things that they wish they could have done if they had had another go at it.
Yeah.
So
It's such a unique adventure too, because there's moments that are just like so poignant and then hard and sad, but also there's really fun moments too. And it's really possible to go either way with all of it. So like, even though it's got kind of like a somber like source material and topic, like you could have a wild fun romp, like you said, Ferris Bueller's Day Out, through it. That's really, really fun. Like the cover art is actually like a big parade with like a performance with a keytar, which makes it great.
With awesome artwork from Minerva, by
She
the
did
way,
great,
of that.
yeah.
Like, she nailed that.
100%. So you can just see like these fun, wild antics. It's like, okay, if you could do, one more thing, what would you do? I would play guitar in a parade going down Main Street. It's like you can just come with these amazing off the wall like ideas. But like you can also go another direction if your playgroup is in the mood for something more serious. Like you can play more of that too, or you could bounce back and forth really easily between those two things. And yeah, Minerva's art is beautiful all the way through. The character art she did for the NPCs is really like evocative. Like you can see it like, oh yeah, no, that's definitely who that is. I love the bully character. The picture of the bully is like, you can see like, oh yeah, that's someone who totally used to be a bully and now might be have outgrown it, or maybe not. Like it's like I don't know.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's got some really, really cute art in it. And I agree. You could go either way. You could go kind of fanciful fun, or you could take it a little more in the emotional route. It does have alternate endings in the adventure, depending on how deep you want to get, to make sure that you're not subjecting yourself to grief on a full auto.
Yeah. I thought that was really thoughtfully done too. It's like, hey, this is like one option that can happen, or it can be this, or so like you can, and it has those little like warnings in there, so you can kind of like, if you're the GM running it, you kind of like ramp it like based on what your players have communicated to you they want from the game.
Yeah, and in addition to the $5 purchase price, there's also several community copies. I think that's like 70 community copies available for free.
Oh wow.
So if somebody wants to check it out and doesn't have the $5 or doesn't prefer the charity that we picked for the adventure, grab a community copy.
Yeah, and I think you also say in the text on Itch that if they want to donate to another cause or something, they can just send you the receipt, that your email's there, and you're happy to send them a copy.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. No, I think that's amazing, and I think it's a great thing to feature is coming up on the holidays, and like the spirit of giving and the time when we're supposed to be thinking of like others and joy and helping spread the wealth and such things.
For sure.
So cool. Yeah. I think it is really important to point out how well it can be used with any game system too. I think that's the one of the coolest things about it is like you clearly wrote it to go with lighthearted, which we talked about 2 weeks ago. But you could very easily take it and run it in almost anything, just because the way you formatted it and the information that's there. So I could see it really easily working with almost anything.
Yeah, any game system that or any, as long as it's closer to modern, you'd have to do more conversion if you want to go away from modern setting, because it does, like, one of the scenes is at a used car lot.
Yeah.
So you're probably not going to have a lot of those in your D&D game, but yeah, it's fairly system agnostic. There are like guides in there on here's how to deal with this in the mechanics of lighthearted, but you could easily sub in any generic game for it.
Yeah. Cool.
I got a question. As our indie designer of the month,
Yeah.
what's your design aesthetic? What makes a game a Kurt Potts game?
Ooh, okay. So I've released a few games.
You didn't get the question I was going to ask you, did you?
I did not have time to prep for these questions. So I would say that it's sort of changed over the years, but I think it's going to be a lighthearted. It's a cheesy way to say it, but I think it's going to be something with a lighthearted feeling to it. It's going to be something that is, I don't know, that sort of has hope or redemption at the center of it. Those are prominent themes in the games that I write. I did Sigils in the Dark as an exploration of this was in a troubling time for me in world news when I was writing that game, and I was exploring why people continue to double down when the things that they've bought into turn out to be bad for them. And so that's why I wrote Sigils in the Dark. Also, I just thought it'd be cool to have a game where you draw sigils. There weren't a lot of games about drawing, journaling games about drawing. So yeah, a lot of them start from a question of how can I explore this idea, and then follow through from there. But things like Lighthearted, Sigils in the Dark, and But One Last Good Day are all sort of explorations of hope and redemption and like those sort of things.
Nice.
Listen, don't forget about Bird Secrets.
I love Bird Secrets. We haven't talked about that one yet.
So Bird Secrets was the first game that I ever wrote. It was because I work in publishing, and one of the things I interact with magazine publishers a lot, and I got a magazine cover on my desk that just said "Amazing Bird Secrets." It was like a birder magazine or something, but I was so blown away by the confidence of that title, "The Amazing Bird." Really, are they amazing bird secrets? And so I started a hashtag of bird secrets on Twitter when that was still a thing you did, and I would post random bird facts with hashtag bird secrets. And so when it came time to, I'm going to write a game, I just piggybacked on that, so people already were watching the hashtag.
That's funny. See, I just assumed it was like the best marketing campaign for an indie game ever, that you just had like this really long ramp up and this amazing master plan that it's like,
wow. No. My GMing style and my marketing style are very similar in that I just throw things out there, and then if anything sticks, I backfill.
Okay. Good.
It meant this the whole time.
Yeah.
I meant to do that.
I meant to do that. So, when you're designing a not like an adventure, but like a system, like for Lighthearted specifically, did you have like the ideas of like the story and the setting, or did you have the ideas of the mechanics first?
So Lighthearted was a world first, and it was thanks to Forrest in the Happy Jacks Discord.
Yay!
Posted their rules for world building, and it was a series of questions. And so I was bored in chat, and I took it and started filling it out. And I was like, I'm going to do a weird modern fantasy thing, and it's going to be about like feeling magic and neon lights and all this. And so I started filling out this setting, which was originally called Nuclear Night School, but spelled Knight. And it actually turned out to be really entertaining and fun to play in, to take a John Hughes movie and then strap Dresden Files onto it. I don't know. That was a good, I don't know, it was a good feeling at the table. But I originally started working with Savage Worlds. I was going to make a Savage Worlds setting book. And every time I did a new draft, I was cutting more and more of Savage Worlds out of the game and adding in more and more scaffolding for like the emotions and the magic system to do like a fun soft magic system. When Kate, my wife, started working on it with me, she's a marriage and family therapist. So she was instrumental in making that emotion spectrum feel right in play and have it connect with the way you might express through a character those emotions. And so so it started from a world. That was where Lighthearted began. Other games have been different. Other games I was like, I want to write a game that just uses 2d6 and has a map. And that's what Tricksters was.
Yeah, we talked about Tricksters last week. That one's super fun. I love that game. I was gonna ask a question and I forgot what it was. Darn it.
I just want to say, as a fellow game designer, I saw Lighthearted go through so many kind of iterations and tweaks, and it was really, it encouraged me not to settle with the game I was designing. When things, weren't necessarily where I want them to be, it's like I'd see Kurt come out and, he'd be running it again. And I was like, maybe I just needed to run it some more, and find the game. And so, hats off to you, man. Like you were one of my North Stars in that process. So,
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
One of my biggest bits of game design advice is make sure you actually like running the game, because you're going to do it about 1,000 times. Through playtesting and cons and all of that. You're going to run that game so many times. You've got to make sure you like it. Don't try to do what you think people want. Make the thing you want to play.
Yeah, because no matter how much you like it, if you run it enough, you will stop liking it. And if you start off not liking it, you're going to hate it.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. And it was super fun to watch, like you were saying, Mo, because so much of Lighthearted's development happened like in the Happy Jacks community.
Yep.
So it was one of those things and it was one of the first ones, I think, of all of us that I think it might still be the only one that's like a unique system. Like a lot of us have done like PBTA hacks and stuff like that we've, gone on and kickstarted and things like that. But like that takes so much bravery, and it turned out so well. And it's such a unique system. And it's really cool to like be somewhere and hear someone, oh, have you heard of this game, Lighthearted? Yes, I have. I have heard of that game. I, in fact, know the person who wrote it. And I got to see like the first like run of it almost. It was very good. So I nerd out about it. We're very proud of you, Kurt.
Yes.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, if you go back in the archives of Happy Jacks, that first Rainbow Railroad stream, I ran an early version where it was still Savage Worlds with a 6-page character sheet, and poor Bernadette.
Oh, yeah. She did so good, though. It was
she did.
Yeah. She was like her first time here, and she's just like, okay, I've played some D&D before, I think, and okay. She did great.
This is a lot.
She looks at me and she goes, I'm a lot, but this is a lot. It's like, I still say it today.
That's the best. It's such a Bernadette thing. Oh my gosh. So funny. 100%. But she's a lot, but it was a lot, and it was great. All of it together was fantastic. It's always fascinating. It's just like watching the little baby game grow up or change, and like all the iterations of it. And I think that's one of the most interesting things. I was actually talking with Ray about this, who's been on the podcast before, yesterday. And like all of us are designing in this, ecosystem where like actual plays and streaming and like all of us are kind of entwined in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I were like talking about, okay, so how much do we think, like it's like a chicken and the egg discussion, like how much do we think we were inspired in our design by like like creating content and making it interesting for people to play, and how much is it like about creating content and making content that people are going to watch?
Right.
And does that change our design choices based on, well, we know people are going to be watching it, and it's, I don't know, it's this weird, just weird circular discussion that you can't really know the answer to, but it's just kind of interesting.
Honestly, like watching you guys putting together games and putting them out has made me not. Because it's like work, and you guys are all
So much
like,
work.
like putting heart and soul into this shit, and hours of work and effort and all this, and I'm like, this is my hobby. I come here to relax. I don't want to. Oh my god, no, I don't want to do that.
When I found out how much money it paid, I realized it was my hobby too.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. But like,
Yeah.
you know, I've got my going on a decade now of writing old people Tales from the Loop Hack.
I'm so excited for that.
And like it's together. I just have to write the book around it, and it would be okay to start getting art and doing all that stuff. And every time I sit down to do it, I'm just like, nah, fuck it. I'm gonna just gonna put it away and play it at cons, and it'll be fun.
Yeah.
It's
And
gonna-
that is fine too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Because I know Kurt has games on his shelf that are not made. I know Kimmy has games on her shelf that are not made.
They're in my computer, but yeah.
But it.
Yeah.
Durant,
Yeah,
you are in
so
the club.
many. So many. That's the hardest thing. It's so easy because, like, my ADHD, I'm like addicted to like making progress and like, oh, okay, that hit of like making a bunch of progress. It's so easy to make that progress at the beginning of the design process.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, oh, I have a new idea. Let's do this, and oh, I can, and I'll get like the first basic mechanics done. I'll do like a little character sheet thingy in Canva, and then I'll be like, I really should fucking not be working on this right now. I need to be working on Starscape or Mains and Magic or any of the other games I've already told people about, and have like some parts of it done already. It's like, oh god, it's so hard. And so I just have this like
Oh yeah.
all these little like in my Google Drive, like all these new folders for all these games with like 2 things in them. Ugh, it's frustrating.
You know what's even harder than getting to the end of that iterative process and getting to the point where it's like, okay, I can't just throw things out. I got to get this book done. Is having released the book, wanting to write supplements and being like, man, if I could just change this rule.
Oh yeah.
Like,
If I get to that
hopefully-
point, yeah, if I get to that point, I'll be very excited because that means I will have finished a thing.
Oh well.
But yeah, no, I can see that would be, yeah. Yeah, I would struggle with that. Be like whatever I would call my system, version 2.1, 2.2, 2.2 and a half.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Start
And it's
naming
like,
them. Start naming them like obscure Japanese fighting games, like Starscape Super Alpha Turbo.
Right? Starscape Maximus.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, but wait, there's no
Yeah.
fighting. We just get angry at each other and then make up again. Yeah.
Like just random words.
Oh my gosh. It's such a weird creative process though. And you have to finish that, Dave. I really want to see it
Maybe someday.
someday.
It might get to a point where like I'm willing to put it out digitally.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I've got the gumption or the motivation or desire to do the whole like make it a real product.
Okay. Well, I have to play it at
Oh,
least
yeah.
once time.
We'll see.
All right. Well, this is a great segue into our first thing this show. I think we might transition into having like topics again. We kind of did that for a while, like back in
Sure.
the Stu era, and then he got bored and he couldn't like think of them ahead of time, so we went to all emails again. But I think we might like start dipping our toes back in like topics. So for this week and next week, because we're having different hosts next week, I wanted us to talk about like new to us games that we just loved this year. So calendar year, which is hard for me because I always think in academic year. I'm like, it's the middle of the year. No, it's not. It's the end of the year. So something that was new to you that you played that you just like loved. And you don't have to be super like strict about the calendar year. If you've played any sessions of it since like January, there you go.
I played a game just last week
Oh, okay.
that I wasn't expecting. And it's called Follow. And it's by the person who did Microscope. I Googled it because you told me I might have to talk about it. And his name is Ben Robbins.
Oh, yeah.
And this seemed like a really cool, maybe 40, 50 page book, zero prep RPG.
Mm-hmm.
It gave you an opportunity to kind of sit around the table and say, you guys want to play one of these 3 kind of games? And your players pick. I think we picked we had to go and we were a posse going to hunt somebody down.
Mm-hmm.
And I was playing with tomes. So, of course, we were no ordinary posse. Follow. Oh, sorry. And so, yeah, we were on this planet that had, bugs that took you down the 10 in a Thundar the Barbarian style world. For anybody under the age of 40, that means post-apocalyptic, but magic. And so Star Wars is long, long ago, far, far away. And Thundar the Barbarian was right after the bombs drop, right up the street. So, there were mutants, and it was weird and cool. And, super light. Your character was a name and a couple tags, and they gave a option of 10 different plot points for your story, and if you had 4 players at the table, you choose 4 of them.
Nice.
And you'd figure out which one is last, and you just each person would just kind of frame a scene and play, and it was surprisingly wonderful. I've been working on a kind of zero prep RPG myself, and I was just like, maybe I was working too hard at this because this has a certain level of elegance, and it's a very short book, laid out, lots of white space, and I was just like, this is really cool. Follow.
Sometimes, like, and there seems to be like this surge of interest in those no prep games or low prep games. And I think that I don't know if that's because people are getting better at designing them, or if we're all just exhausted and don't have time to prep in lives anymore. Yeah.
And so I think ultimately this is, if you're designing something like this, the question is, are you going to teach somebody how to role play? Are you going to give somebody enough to kind of have, the feeling of a theme to their magical tea time,
Yeah.
And it's it's an abstract idea. We don't have to talk about it on this podcast. But this is very much for people who play RPGs.
Yeah.
You've watched some movies, and you know how the thing is supposed to work. Maybe somebody didn't show up for the game this week. I got a thing. Let's play it.
That's cool.
I think that's really cool.
I think their popularity also really. Oh, sorry, Kurt. Go ahead.
No, please.
Okay. I think part of the popularity of the zero prep GM-less games or things like that comes out that it starts to cross over into the I just play games with my friends sometimes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not necessarily like hardcore RPG players, but
Mhm.
like maybe we play board games
Mhm.
and
Mm-hmm.
maybe, we just are, it's a Saturday and I'm drinking beers with my friends in the backyard and we're just going to do something. Here's a little directed something we can do. And I didn't have to spend all week figuring out what's going to happen. And
Yeah.
we didn't all start this process 8 months ago. And now, and like, if you only play it the one time, you can still sit down and have a good time.
Right. And you didn't
Oh,
buy
yeah.
the $80 worth of books?
Right? Yeah. You're not into, the $300,000 worth of metal figures and paints and all the other things that can come down that path. But
Mm-hmm.
like, I think there is a tie there where it starts to bleed over into the greater games market.
Yeah.
That
Like-
Mhm.
Yeah. A kind of a marriage between RPGs and like party games / board
yeah,
games.
exactly. Yeah. It's like
Mhm.
everybody likes playing Cards Against Humanity, but when you played it a few times, you're kind of like, okay, I'm not shocked anymore. I'd like to try
Yeah.
something different.
Yeah.
Like, this was
Mhm.
great, awesome. Now let's try something different. And when you start shopping for different things, you find different things,
Yeah.
Walk down the weird digital aisle,
Yeah. I've been thinking about this too because I've been thinking about like making like adaptations of some of my games and like incorporating kind of that element too of like, can I make this like a one-shot standalone thing or a game where you just pick it up and play it right away without having to do a bunch of prep? Because I think that's a new thing that's being kind of developed. I think like For the Queen and stuff like that was kind of like the precursor because literally you can just pick that up and play it wherever.
Right.
And there were a few
Mhm.
games before that did that too, but there's just there's just such a big market for that. Like how many times have we been somewhere and we're drinking and hanging out, but and then we start all playing For the Queen or something like that. And like Fiasco was kind of like this and things like that. We're just like, it's just so easy and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And if you didn't have anything planned, cool. And if we don't finish, it's not that big of a deal. I don't know. There's just some freedom in it, and there's so much appeal in that. I don't know.
Yeah. I think a lot of the really simplistic indie games sort of they're coming from a place of assuming this is not your first RPG and relying on the fact that we all kind of learn how to play pretend when we're little. And so a lot of it is just guided pretend.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
one of the things that's really hard when writing those kinds of games is there are things that come easy to us, and then there are things that like will stump us in any sort of situation when you're doing collaborative storytelling. And the game needs to get out of the way when it's easy and hold your hand when it's not.
Right.
And a lot of game like rules light kind of games will get out of the way when it's hard and hold your hand when it's easy.
Yeah.
And so it's really difficult to write. It's like the thing about I wrote you such a long letter I didn't have time to write a short one. There's
Mhm.
something about hitting that perfect tiny game
Hmm.
that's really difficult.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But you say that it felt like it did it really well.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I think, I absolutely agree with you, Kurt. I think another thing that draws a lot of people to these things is that how many RPG books do you have? And how many have you read?
Yeah.
And a game that says you don't have to read me is a heck of a carrot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
hard though, because it's like, yeah, it's such a weird balance of like giving enough information and not like like I had to do for Decima, it's like I had 16 tiny card pages.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like rewrote that and
Mhm.
rewrote it and rewrote it. And that was just for a simple game where you just like put the cards down and flip them over based on the color on the back. And even that was so hard.
Simple, she says.
I mean, you'd think it would be very simple. Like it's
Mhm.
not a role playing game. You don't have to worry about dice or different things. Like it's just like pass out this many of each card, flip them over, and read them out loud and come up with a thing. But even that was so hard to get in such a small. So having a concise, this is like brings you into the game immediately with like a couple different things, one for each player. You said that's such a. I love the elegance of it, like you said, elegance that makes it easy. Everybody gets a thing, and then we get going.
Right.
But very cool. All right. Other games. Goody.
Okay, all right. New to me games that I played this year. I had to think about it a lot. I didn't get like the full con experience. My schedule was just bad for spending whole weekends at the couple of cons I usually attend, where I specifically go to seek out the strange new worlds, as they say. But I did get to play Slug Blaster,
Uh-huh.
which was a lot of fun. I liked a lot of it. You're basically a bunch of skate punk teens in a weird future of dimensional travel.
Yeah, it's like the Mountain Dew commercial.
Yeah, it is definitely like what all of us in the 90s dreamt the like X Games were about.
Yeah,
Like, it's kind of that vibe. Like it's kind of just out there and weird and wild, and I kind of dig the multidimensionality of it and the just weird stuff that the game encourages you to be able to just be cool, man.
Yeah.
Like do cool shit. That was a lot of fun.
What are the mechanics for that one?
Forged in the Darkish.
Oh,
Ish,
Forged in the
yeah.
Darkish. Okay.
And like the one time I played it, like a quarter of our game session turned into like in the dark, like hardcore nerds,
Oh.
like nerding out over like half the table really likes the downtime mechanics and the other half hates the downtime mechanics.
Okay.
And I was like, this is a complicated issue and I'm not qualified to speak on it. I'm gonna sit here and listen for a while. But like, I know me, I like the downtime stuff because I feel like if a movie, like I tend to think about RPGs as a film, right? Like whenever you sit down to play one, that's the movie you're gonna watch for that 3 hours, 4 hours. And there are very few movies that are pedal to the metal, full throttle the whole 2 hours you're watching.
Yeah, no.
Hardcore Harry.
And like, there's a couple
Yeah.
that do it and make it to the point where you're like, that was pretty cool.
Yep.
You know, like Mad Max Fury Road, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a movie that just doesn't let up. It's just in your face the whole time you're watching it, and you're like, holy shit, at the end.
No, because even that has breaks in there.
Yeah.
Small
I
ones.
would venture to agree, but I'm not willing to fight over it.
Okay.
But like there's a couple out there that manage to transcend that moment, right? Like the weird Jason Statham prank movie.
Frank. Yeah.
Where he's
what's
like,
the
I
name
gotta
of
keep
that?
my heart rate up or I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just crazy ass wild action for 2 hours, and like it makes it right. Like it makes it into that like that was pretty awesome. I'd watch that again. But there's a lot that like try and do that and just don't get there.
Yeah.
This like the thing I like about RPGs is like you get to, and it took me a while to kind of wrap my brain around it, right? Like as a player or a GM historically, is the like if you don't give your players a second to breathe, their characters don't become people.
Yeah.
Right? If it's just, all right, you walk into this room and there's 7 goblins and they try and murder you. And you walk in the next room and there's 8 goblins and they try and murder you. Like, if that's all you're doing, then those characters are just tokens on a game board.
Yeah.
Right? But if you do that a little bit and then they have to go back to a town and they spend time in the town just talking with random people, and you're not instantly putting the town in horrible danger, like, suddenly those characters have a minute to go, oh, okay, all right, what would I do here? Like, I don't have anything I have to be doing right now. What would I do in my downtime? Like, just a couple of seconds of letting players figure that out, like, unlocks a lot. So I'm very pro downtime in order to give you a whole story. But apparently the In the Dark fandom is very strongly divided about it. Because I think there's some people that want Slug Blaster to be just crazy, super cool, full throttle
Balls to the
action the whole
wall,
time you're playing. That's not my jam. But the game is designed to let you have those downtime moments. And it was cool the way we did it, and it was neat.
Yeah.
The other
That
two...
was by Mythworks, right?
Yeah.
So-
Wilkie, I think, is the author.
I think it's Mikey. Ham.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
Mikey Han.
Yeah.
Wilkie is the company in the game that. Yeah. My bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, that one, and I think their other one, the Cyberpunk, which is actually SBR
CBRPAK.
plus
Yeah.
P and K.
Yeah, Cyber plus Punk or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Are both like Forge in the Dark, but they kind of streamline it. They picked and choose. They pulled out a bunch of the mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the Cyberpunk, whatever it is also kind of an example of like the party game, because it's like
Card.
yeah, well,
stuff, yeah.
it's not cards. It's all like reusable. It's like in a box. All the character sheets are in there, reusable, and you just like
Dry
and
erase.
yeah, you use dry erase, and the like adventure's all there. You literally can like pull it out and like run it right there without any prep, really. So it's pretty interesting. But yeah, I need to. I'm not familiar enough with Forged in the Dark to like grok the differences, like just reading them. I need to like sit down and do like a comparison at some point. But
Yeah.
Mhm.
And when this all happened at the table, I was like, I played a little. Like, this
Yeah.
game's cool to me, I guess.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I certainly don't feel strongly about it.
What was your character for that game?
I played essentially like IRL streamer kid that
Mhm.
ended up with like a Silver Surfer skateboard kind of
Nice.
thing. And like super great camera equipment. So like in our group, I was the one that was like speeding ahead to like throw camera drones up in the air when we knew we were going to do something cool and try and get it on film so
Right.
that we could post it online.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then like we ended up with like a giant burning skull that came and attacked our town, and it totally wasn't our fault. It was a lot.
Sure it wasn't.
Definitely not your fault.
But
Definitely not your fault. I love how you like said that right off the bat, even though no one accused it. But yeah,
No, no.
your fault. Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't. Clearly wasn't our fault.
of course. Yeah,
Just laying it out there so everybody knows.
So
oh.
I do have a question for you. Did the downtime mechanics, like, was there a moment that you wouldn't have gotten if you had blasted through those downtime mechanics?
Yeah. Like, Ray, friend of the show, Ray, was running the game for
Okay.
us. He gave us like a couple of moments of downtime where like our moms belong to like an anti-dimensional skateboarder
Right.
league. And we all were forced to attend this meeting to make up for the burning skull in the sky thing.
That's so good.
And so like it was this like we're all sitting there in the back like, oh, this sucks. And it's just that time where like you're sitting around commiserating with your friends like, I don't want to be here. You know, like the famous example at the con years ago with the like we're all at the assembly when we played the 16 candles.
Oh yeah.
And I started with the you suck. Like just, because like it's totally that vibe of like I'm at a school assembly and this is horrible. And I don't want to be here and I'll do anything to get out of it.
Oh man.
Like and that like again starts to make those characters feel like people.
Yeah.
And that's what people remember. Like yeah.
I think you actually might really dig Slug Blaster Kurt because it has very 80s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle feels to it.
Oh.
And,
Oh yeah.
Um,
There was I own it. I haven't played it yet. But there was definitely a two cakes kind of feeling that I had to deal with.
Oh.
If you're an indie designer, you might know the two cakes reference. When you bake a cake and take it to your office work thing, and then somebody else brings a different, better cake, and then a third, and you're sitting there going, "Oh my God, look, my cake is so bad. Look how good this cake is." And somebody walks up and goes, "Two cakes." Yeah, there was some levels of two cakes I had to get over when I first saw Slug Blaster, and I was like, "Why is it so good?"
it's a very different game.
Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
like
But I think, you know, it has some similar vibes. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think anything that's based on like Forged in the Dark in any way is like gonna have the same heart that Lighthearted is at all.
Like I made two
Yeah.
Forged in the Dark games, and I'm trying not to go down that digression because you're not really trying to fight for it, you know.
No,
And Kimmy doesn't really care.
I'm all for downtime. I'm in team downtime at all times. I wrote a game that is all almost downtime. Like the whole point of the game is the downtime, and sometimes you'll fight spacey stuff, and then the big part of doing that will be about how you don't like each other or you like each other, and then how that affects all your other downtime.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Team downtime, woohoo! But
and then the other two games, brand
Okay.
new to me games.
What?
Oh,
we're not doing a
We're just
full
doing
year
one?
recap. You're picking one.
oh, I thought it was a whole just tell. My bad.
No, it says host share their
Kadej-
favorite
Kadej's
new
about
to
to do
them
his
game.
Story time with Dave.
You're like
thing.
my
Yeah.
daughter. My favorite is blue and pink. Okay,
See,
that's
I
not a
didn't
favorite
lit-
means,
I
kid.
literally made the roster in my head of like these are the new games I played this year because
Yeah, okay.
I don't have that many.
Okay. Now it's like Wester, your favorite. I will allow one more if there's like another true favorite.
Well, I think probably. I think my favorite game that I played this last year was the One Ring game
Oh,
because like coming to the universe as I have read these casually and watched the films casually. And speaking of, today's the 20th anniversary of Return of the King.
it is.
But like getting into it and then being pulled into like the world of it way more than I had ever bothered to educate myself before, and like enjoying that process.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had always like kind of glossed over like there's a lot more to this, but I'm not diving into that. Like that's not enough. But then getting into it and like following down the rabbit holes of like I probably watched 200 hours of video about like weird lore history stuff and all of that shit. Yeah, because I was just like I would go home and be like I didn't know what this meant. I gotta figure it out. Like
That's so cool.
so like yeah like it was a lot of fun for me that way. Like
Mhm.
getting into a new level of like I'd always enjoyed the books and films, but like getting into that next level of like, oh, this is really cool. I want to know more about this.
Yeah.
That was fun. That was definitely worth it.
Oh, awesome. Cool. Like mechanics wise, like I feel like was that a meh or
No, I mean, I absolutely adored the travel mechanic.
I did
like,
too.
Just journeyings are hard and scary and things can happen, but good things can happen. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
really, really like that.
That was one of my favorite mechanics of the year. Like I had a backup that was going to be my,
Oh.
but that's okay. I have a backup just in case. Yeah, that journey mechanic was just such a delight. And I hate journey mechanics and I hate table roll mechanics for the most part. I really don't like them. But that just every time was so interesting and so delightful. It changed my mind on roll mechanics, and I actually stole it and adapted it and put it in Starscape because I liked it so much. But it was just like, it was so neat. Like sometimes we'd have these beautiful, whimsical moments, and then other times there'd be like an attack or something, and sometimes just something really awful and creepy and dark, and it just, you never knew. And it was so fun as a GM because I never knew either. And as someone who loves like improv GMing, it was a constant like exciting thing. Okay, okay. All right. So and then like asking, what do you think that is? And like coming up with these neat story things together. And I don't know if that translates well to every table, but it was magic. We had some sessions where it was pretty much just journeying, and I had so much fun those sessions.
Now, I mean, it is kind of an unfair comparison because it was like a whole really cool campaign versus a one-shot.
True. Yeah.
Like, so I think both games are great. I had fun playing both. It's just the Lord of the Rings was a step above because of the depth and stuff that we got.
Well, we did over 25 sessions of it,
Right,
so
yeah.
you're gonna get a little more in the weeds than in like a one shot at a
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
with people you don't know. Yeah. So, well, thank you. That makes me feel good. Thank you.
Kurt?
Kurt, you want to go or do you want me to go?
Yes.
Okay.
I can go. So mine's actually going to be a Forged in the Dark game as well.
Woohoo!
Uh-huh.
It is not out, so it's not something you can go and get. I had the distinct pleasure of getting to play Spell and Blade
Ooh.
by Strauss Asimovic.
Mm.
Strauss, I hope if you hear this, I pronounced your last name correctly because I've never said it out loud before. This is a high fantasy, or I guess maybe medium fantasy game, using the Forged in the Dark sort of structure. Strosh has released a bunch of different Forged in the Dark games, Band of Blades, the Star Wars, the not Star
Scum
Wars,
and
not
Scum and Villainy.
yeah, Scum and Villainy,
Yeah.
all of those. So their mastery over the system is pretty spectacular. The standouts in this game, though, for me, were that they incorporated a life path system. So you would begin your character with whoever your background was. Think traveler, right, where you came from. Then you go into the careers that you want to be in. And you get certain actions or abilities from each of these careers. And every piece of this game had weird little things that made you want to go on an adventure. Like every bit of flavor text that you would find was not flavor text. It was adventure ideas that the GM could just take from the get-go. The way that they sort of tweaked some of the consequences to incorporate taking damage, actually getting injured, and having sort of a little bit more D&D-esque, or I guess old school D&D-esque experience. But the vibe of the game was it was an older fantasy style, more Conan than like more modern fantasy, right? But the experience of going through the life paths and building out this character that started out he was a mushroom person from underground who started out in a mushroom cult that worshipped the Great Mycelium Network.
Nice.
And eventually became a bard that sort of traveled the land, extolling the virtues of mushrooms. That was sort of his whole shtick. But we ended up having some really meaningful moments with this character. Like one of the characters, because we played for several sessions, and one of the characters died at some point, because it turned out that the game is actually quite deadly if you want to be in front. And so yeah, the bard did not get in front; he stayed in the back. But yeah, it was a wonderfully simple system to pick up and grok. There were very few that, like, the dice pools were really small. So you might have like one die, two dice in an ability. Two dice in an ability is like really good, because you're also getting dice from other things like equipment or something else. I don't want to say too much because the game's still in development. And I don't know how much Josh would want me to talk about things that might not still be in the game, because I played it for a
By the
bit.
time we buy it, none of that's in
It's
there.
not there.
Yeah, none of
It's
that'll
a
be in
really
there.
cool mechanic. What the fuck? Where is
Right?
it?
I want to be a mushroom.
But yeah, just everything I found, every time I would read a little bit of flavor text or a little, like, the text around an ability, it would talk about things that you needed to know what they were, but it was up to the table to decide what they were. So you were kind of building out this mythology of the world as you're explaining what these little bits of flavor mean. And it was a wonderful experience. It was a great game.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think one of the most brilliant things about Blades in the Dark is that notion of the evocative language that really makes you lean in and like almost have to put the book down, because now you're just imagining what's going on. I've heard it called gameable lore, and that is kind of the decision that the table makes as to what this is and how it's going to work in our world. And it may be totally different at another table.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
there was a ton of that all throughout the text. It was a wonderful experience to play.
That's cool. Do you know how far along is it in development? It's just at the beginning, or?
I don't know.
Okay. I mean, to be fair, as a game designer, he might not know either.
Yeah. I would say keep an eye
Way to
on
find out.
Strash's socials. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, someone who was like, "Oh yeah, it'll totally, like, I think it'll be done in the next 6 months." 2 years later, I think it'll be done in the next 6 months. 2 years.
Yeah.
Like I've been there. I guess it's my turn.
Kina's turn.
My turn. So it didn't come out this year, but it's new to me. It was new to me this year. It's called Told by Starlight. I talked about this a couple times. I played this at a Ray actually ran this game for me too, at Strategicon, and it's this interesting, quirky little game. And I loved it because it made me think about game design in a different way. And basically, Told by Starlight is you're in like a community. It's kind of a narrative game, and you all start off with just this big piece of paper, and you all just draw dots all over it, like randomly. And then through playing the game, you create constellations and then lore around those constellations, which is my jam anyway, because I love stuff like that. But the interesting thing about the mechanics is, one, like creating just this random assortment of dots and making this mythology around it. But also there's a lot of interesting things where you hand the creation over to the next person, because you like pass the question along. So if you start something, you don't necessarily get to create the whole thing of it. So you get to start drawing something, and then you pass it on to, and they get to create the story about what you drew or whatever it is. Which is hard for me, because I don't know if anybody knows, but I'm a control freak. And shocking, I know everybody is like, what? And as a game designer myself, like I like creating lore and like, okay, this is going to be the thing. So it was a really interesting exercise to have random things that you would have, because it was like you draw a card, and that would like decide what type of prompt you got, and then like passing it to the next person. So it really made it a more collaborative effort, and I think things went in a very different way than they would have if I just got to be like, oh, I'm drawing this and it's going to be this or this. And then it layered in this really interesting way that I wasn't prepared for, like, because you start running out of space on the paper, right? And so then you start getting these cards, and you're like, okay, I'm going to have to connect this constellation with that constellation. What is this going to represent? And that part was fascinating too. We started having this, what ended up as like first kind of like creating, and it may play out differently for other people because it doesn't specify what it has to be.
Right.
Like it kind of started off with like creating kind of a pantheon and like some old stories and stuff. And then it's like, oh, well, there's only this little spot. So I'm going to draw this line. This represents the river between like the mother and the child that she lost, or that's on the other side of the page. It turns out this constellation, like the strong hunter, is actually her child or whatever. I don't even remember what it was, but it's like you start then making all these connections that are really interesting, and sometimes they're a little weird, but it's something that none of us would have come up with by ourselves. And it was really interesting playing at a table with almost all strangers too, which I hadn't really done before. I don't play with strangers very often because I have like 40 people who play at Happy Jacks. So, and I forget that they don't all know each other, but they all know me. So like sometimes when I go to cons and I suddenly sit down at a table, I look around, I'm like, I don't know anybody at this table. This is weird.
How novel.
Super novel, right? So that was interesting. And it was just as a game designer, it had elements that I loved and appreciated, and then also like had to make note of, because it's like, this is a thing games can do. And I love games that kind of push that envelope of what is possible in games and what you can do. Like all of you can sit around and draw on a thing and make this wild lore up and have it be a really cool, satisfying experience. And it was just interesting like that.
I have a comment about this game. I was running a game next to the table you were playing in,
Yeah,
and you guys were having an annoying level of fun.
we were so loud. We were so loud.
I was like, why am I running this game? I should be over there playing that game.
That is the worst feeling, running a con game, and then another table is having more fun next to you. It's you're like, oh man, I gotta step it up, or we gotta stop and let them finish.
You know, the stuff they were saying was just so weird, and like they were like just talking about the craziest stuff and stars, and I was just like, wait, what?
Yeah, it was wild. And then we ended up like adding a piece of page to it because we wanted more space, and then so that ended up being like the wall, and then like the new gods were trying to chase away the old god. It's just like really interesting stuff. It was also really interesting to watch how people made constellations and how different they all were.
Right.
Like people like would draw things
Different
and I'm
levels
like,
of drawing skill.
well, yeah, but like what they would see in the dots, I mean. Like how like different brains interpreted like different connections of shapes. That was really, I mean, as a teacher, that was really interesting for me because there were things where I like very clearly would be like, oh yeah, I see. And then some people would say, oh, this is the so-and-so. And you're like, what? How? What? Okay, I'm just going to go with it. And then they'd kind of draw it a little bit. And it was just really fascinating to see how people interpreted those things together and then tying other things together. It was a fascinating study. And I keep saying the word fascinating. I'm sorry. If you're tired of hearing that, I'm sorry. It was an interesting, mind-bending journey into like, just like people's interpretation of
Right.
shapes and how they come up with stories. Yeah, I don't know. It was very interesting. It's a super like GM-less, like rules-light game. It's very easy to play. Yeah, just kind of interesting. I'm really enjoying. It was interesting because my experience this year is I dove into One Ring, which is a bit more crunchy than I normally would be like interested in doing. And then on the other side, like I also like made a point to play as many weird rules-light games as possible.
Yep.
And so it's just been this great kind of like bouncing back and forth between systems like that.
Yeah. Filling up your toolbox.
Yeah. And sorry, that one's by Ryan Kahn. I know I talked about it because he was one of our indie designers of the month in a previous month. Which is when I, one of the reasons because I played this game and I was like, I want you to be an indie designer of the month because you're awesome and I love this game. But that's just, I don't know, it just kind of stuck with me. I don't know why. It's like one of those things where I'm starting to think about other games and the shelf, which I know was just symbolism. It wasn't like actually a shelf. I have a Google Drive, but like it's one of those things when I start designing a game, I kind of like that one just pops into my brain a little bit. And like what things did I learn from this to make it new? So yeah, I don't know.
Nice.
That was my game that I played this year. I might have to come up with another answer next week since I'm going to be here next week too, but we'll see.
I won't be here next week, so you can talk about One Ring.
There you go. I think that's cheating.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Shall we read some letters?
Yeah, we should. We're at an hour and 12 minutes, so we should probably read emails.
Dun, dun, dun.
Why don't we? Okay. Yeah, just do it. Mailbag number 1.
I have a delicate request for help. Here's the situation. I like running.
No. You have to do the greeting. That's
Oh,
my favorite part.
Hello, Jackers. I have a delicate request for help. Here's the situation. I like running games set in a historical Earth-like world, meaning it is the Earth we know, plus magic and monsters. I'm also a stickler for as much history accuracy as I am knowledgeable about and able to play. I've been running a Weird War II game, Nazi werewolves, Cthulhu elements, etc. And there are a lot of bad people who do a lot of bad things to a few different groups of people. As I run it, I'm being delicate and sticking to lines and veils and X cards. However, I'll be honest, I'm pretty much the only one who's concerned. The players and the good guys or friends, but not terribly mature.
We are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they are.
I think the
good
players
guys.
are good guys and or friends, not terribly mature, politically correct. They're not rapists or anything.
No, racists.
They're not racist or anything.
Hopefully
Racist
both.
or
Hopefully
racist.
both.
Both.
Just not
All the
cutting
above,
edge
please.
sensibilities.
Yeah.
So no real issues. Here's the problem. In my other group, we're about to start a new campaign playing Rippers, Savage Worlds, Victorian classic monster hunters. Think Hugh Jackman's Van Helsing. And so there's a whole Victorian society thing, women in society, class structure, slavery, colonialism, scary medicine, etc. Now I realize that the setting says the Rippers group makes no issues with race or gender, but the rest of society does. So how can I make this comfortable for everybody, but not throw history right out the window? I mean, I don't want a historical Earth. If I didn't want a historical Earth, I'd set it somewhere else. Also, I will state with some pride that the other group was very impressed by how much they inadvertently learned about World War II from my game. Pass.
Nah, but not so fast. There's more. One of the players from the second group had to go to another city, so he graciously provided us with 2 replacements. What? A player that can't play anymore that automatically fills the seats? How wild!
Amazing.
These two can cover my shift.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god. The manager's dream.
One of them.
One of them is an actual young woman. I realize that the Happy Jacks crew is not the traditional RPG sausage party that I grew up with playing in the 80s, but I've little experience playing with a mixed group. I also realize that we're all human beings and I shouldn't have to treat anyone differently as long as I'm being respectful. But I have met her at the point of writing once. By the time you read this, after my son runs a 2 or 3 session D&D 5e game palette cleanser, I will probably have 1 or 2 GMing sessions under my belt. So I have no idea how she'll react to things presented in the game setting. A world where men's and women's roles, as well as class and colonial systems in society, are significantly different. As I said, I'm making a point of pushing the safety tools, so I hope it all goes well. Any suggestions you have would be greatly appreciated, other than completely change the history of the world. Thanks, and don't ever stop jacking. Ken from Canada. I'm passing on the PS. I don't like to be pushed into societal expectations.
Which is hilarious to me because this is a game about pushing your players into societal expectations. This is the whole
Yep.
That might be the joke. That might be
Yeah.
intentional.
Yeah. Got me. Good job.
Good.
I have a lot to say about Victorian England, so
Yeah.
maybe I'll go last.
No, I mean we need to have a conversation about it. It shouldn't be like we each take turns talking.
Right. So the World War II thing is weird and interesting. And I think, you guys are so far down the road. Enjoy yourselves. Long as everybody's having fun. Like I don't think lines and veils are to police people at tables. I think they're to make sure everybody's comfortable, and safety words are a thing for a reason.
Yeah.
As far as the Victorian England thing, I'm currently working on a project about Victorian England. And one of the things that came up was, how many Black people are actually in Victorian England.
Yeah.
I think by Victorian England and Van Helsing, he means the 1700s or the 1800s. But in 1600, Queen Victoria puts out a word that we got to get rid of all the Black people in England because apparently there are too many Black people in England. And 30 years later, King James does the same thing because apparently there are too many Black people in England.
I think you might have some names mixed up.
1600 is Queen Elizabeth.
Queen Elizabeth.
Queen
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
So Queen Elizabeth I, who died in 1603, and then was
Yes.
passed on by her nephew,
King
King James.
King James.
Yeah.
Right.
But
he
Queen
wrote a Bible.
Victoria, who in the Victorian times was actually an abolitionist, and she was very much against by then England itself, like the proper, had gotten rid of slavery
And the slave trade.
Yeah, and the slave trade, but it was still existent in a lot of the
colonies,
Commonwealth
right.
and the colonies, and the United States of America.
But
Depending on which part of her reign.
But as early as I want to say 1750,
Yeah.
lots of Black people in England are writing books saying, "Hey, the slavery thing is lame."
Yeah.
They're producing operas and orchestral arrangements.
Yeah.
That is to say, they're very literate. They got a little money.
Absolutely.
And there's a cat named who writes a book and becomes very wealthy, talking about how he escaped slavery in the islands.
Yeah.
So
he became very famous too. I forget his name, but he became
Equiano.
very and he
Olaudah
became
Equiano.
very famous and met Queen Victoria.
Mhm.
And was like part of her, and actually Prince Albert, her husband, was the one who was like really like this is completely wrong, and kind of got her thinking on that path. And they did a lot and to help him get his message out there.
So I think it's funny. We had this whole conversation about like what critics were talking about around what's the name of the hunky British bodice ripper on Netflix.
Bridgerton?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We had a whole conversation about Bridgerton and how
It was like Julie Andrews reads the thing at the beginning and end of every
Oh, yeah.
and how all of these media critics were like, it's totally ahistorical that black people existed in England,
Yeah,
but it's a good show. And
Yeah.
it was just interesting reading about all the people at different levels of class and caste, and and that's just the black people. Don't get me started on the Indians and the Chinese, and like kind of London in particular is quite what's the word? Cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
For probably the last 600 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to like be too weird about it.
Well, I think that's going to be the thing. Like, you don't know this woman very well. You've met her one time as of this writing, and it concerns me that she is the only in your group. That, like, it can sometimes be interesting or empowering to play in that power dynamic. I played games where it was, like, historical, and it was, like, kind of fun to be, like, the woman bucking traditions, and, like, oh, I'm super powerful, so I'm able to, like, go against society. But that was a very safe table where I knew a lot of people, and it has been significantly less fun, and we've had whole episodes and horror stories on this podcast dedicated to being the only of a certain marginalized group at the table, and having that feeling of, well, that sucks. Everybody else gets to have a good time, and I don't. I have to go somewhere else, or sleep somewhere else, or be treated somewhere else, or I can't go in that store, or everyone is listened to except me, even though I'm the one with stats and skills that know the most about this. It can really be awful, and it can really make it not fun. I know you said completely change the history of the world is not what the advice you wanted, but I would have a serious heart-to-heart talk with this woman beforehand and being like, this is the setting we're playing in.
Mm-hmm.
And even because, especially if she's new to role-playing, I don't know if she is or not, it might not be something that is even occurred to her. And so her sitting down and like filling out lines and veils and stuff ahead of time, it may not even occur to her that might be something she faces when she sits down at the table.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And like we were having I had to have this conversation. Adam is just starting a mage game that's set at the end of World War II. So he and I had a conversation because he has people of color at his table, and I was like, hey, like, and he of course like comes from indigenous family background, and so he was already on it. But I was like, just make sure, like, if you're playing historical, like there was still segregation at this time. There's still all these things at this time. And his choice was, okay, we're playing in the world of mage, and so we are almost not going to deal at all with the outside world. Like, this is going to be mage society, which has a totally different structure than like human society. So I would highly encourage you to go that route. Like, maybe, I don't know. Like, I don't know how weird world you want to get. If you really want to have like a true to world experience, or true to world setting, maybe there's something that is a loophole. So she's not the only person at the table who's treated badly. Like, maybe she's got a talisman that makes everyone like see like respect her and like forget for a moment, and like, or that she like forgets societal structures or something when it comes to her, or something like that. Because otherwise I'm afraid she's not going to have a lot of fun unless she just really enjoys that. Some people really enjoy playing in that. but it tends to be much less fun if you're the only one who has to deal with those
Right.
roles.
I think another interesting thing is she playing a woman character,
Mhm.
and is she the only one playing a woman character?
Yeah.
You know, because that could make a difference dramatically. I'm always I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot.
No, that's
No, you're
great.
fine.
I mean,
No, please continue.
yeah, I feel like as a person of color, like, yeah.
I'm always interested when I watch Hayao Miyazaki films,
Mhm.
several of which are set in Victorian England, and like these are batshit crazy Victorian England. You know, he has a whole World War II fighter pilot film where the protagonist has a pig head, and like everybody knows him, and he like a lot of people don't like him because he's a butthead, and like it is what it is, and yeah, I find that there are lots of ways to get around it, and there several films. I'm thinking of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen that does an interesting job of like, as you were saying, making the story more about class, you know, than about necessarily social hierarchies.
Yeah.
They are all powerful individuals, and the vampire lady never
Mina, yeah.
gets, you know, kind of held up at the train station for not wearing a long enough petticoat.
Yeah. Kurt, you were going to say something, I think.
Yeah, so I think there's two ways to come at this, and obviously this is with the caveat that you've already spoken to this woman and agreed that we want to explore these themes at the table, or maybe this isn't the game for you. But assuming you want to explore the themes of the oppression in the status quo at the time, there were detractors at the time. There were people in that time that thought it was wrong then.
Yep.
Why don't we feature those people?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There were people in that time that ignored and just flat out refused to obey the social norms. I mean, there are great stories about Victorian women who were like, screw it, I'm gonna be a pirate, I'm gonna duel a bunch of dudes and marry their wives. Like, that's historically accurate. So I don't know why that story doesn't get brought up when we talk about this. So talk to her and ask if she's comfortable playing in a status quo of oppression. What side of that oppression do you want to explore? Do you want to fight that oppression? Do you want to see what it feels like, for the character to experience that oppression? I mean, I think those are the only two places you can go with it. And if I'm not guessing anything about this, but if the only reason to be historically accurate is to oppress the characters and push upon them, oh, it was such a bad time. I mean, and that's not for everybody.
Yeah, or for the sake of
It's
accuracy
not going to be
itself.
for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like for the sake of accuracy itself. Like I want to run this game and I want it to be accurate because it's accurate. And it's like, that's great. Like it seems like people learned a lot about World War II from your game. That's wonderful. But it's not going to be wonderful. Like she has to live in a world where she's already marginalized because she's a woman. Now, it's not to the extent it was in Victorian times by any means in at least most places, at least the places that most role-playing people are going to be. But it's still something like she has to live with. So while it might be fun for the other people at your table to explore the strange, different society of that time period, that element's not going to be different for her. That's going to be like what she has to deal with every single day at her day job, what she has to deal with when she's walking around or on the subway or in the street. Like, that's not fun. And it's not fun to come to a game where you want to be powerful and escape and be forced to deal with pretend misogyny that you have to deal with in the real world all the time. So keep that in mind, Ken, because everything else about your world will be pretend, except that will just be a different flavor of echo of what she lives. And that's not fun. And that's, it could, maybe it is. I wanted to circle back because like Mo, you were saying, is she the only person playing a woman at the table? That can also be a big difference, but not always in a good way.
Right.
Like sometimes it can be really hard to be someone who's like marginalized and watch someone else play someone who's being marginalized and like kind of LARPing at your lived experience.
Mm.
And it's like it's interesting for them to put themselves in that role because then they get to leave it.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're like, cool. And then now I'm going to go home and I'm going to like walk to my car and I'm going to have to keep my keys between my fingers while I walk to my car because like it's not safe. And like there's just all these elements of it that are going to be really tricky. So honestly, like I still circle back to, especially because you don't know this person well. And honestly, they're joining the game. They're going to want to be a team player. Like I'm not 100% sure that they're not going to like just
be quiet and sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And or just be like, oh, it's fine. Because also women are programmed by society to do that anyway. For most of us, like I still have to fight it, but so yeah, there's just like so many problems that could make it just a horror story experience for her and not or on the other spectrum just not fun. Like maybe it's not a horror story, but it's just not fun for her. So I would just ask you to like really like there's not a one answer, I don't think, to that, but really think about it and whether if it is that important to you to keep it historically accurate, it might be just like, hey, this might not be the game for you. Like, obviously, have her be part of that choice, but I don't know. It seems like you might be choosing your setting over a player.
I kind of see there's a very easy kind of answer in like just make her character rich as hell. Because then people are like, they're just eccentric and okay, we'll just whatever. She walks into a place that's historically like a gentleman's club, like she shouldn't be allowed in there. Whatever, she bought the building. Mm-hmm. Okay, now it's hers. Fuck off. Shut up. Right?
Yeah, okay.
You could do that because then that kind of turns that mechanic on its ear.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? But like, I totally agree with everything that's been said here. The thing that pops into my head as like a good example of dealing with historic accuracy in a way that still is interesting and palatable now. One of my favorite shows of the last few years, For All Mankind on Apple.
Mm-hmm.
It starts at basically the beginning of the big space race, right? And historically, in that time period, things were bad for lots of people. But the show kind of tackles these issues in the story from sort of a modern perspective, right? Like, there are always people that have been more interested in justice, right? In liberty for everyone and pushing things that direction. And so the characters in the show deal with these problems, but from the perspective that we're all like, oh yeah, these characters that we like, they're on the right side of things.
Right.
There might be other characters out there that are like, we can't have gay people in space.
Wait,
we
slow down, not all at once.
Yeah, like that kind of stuff. We can't have, women in the space program.
Yeah.
We can't have people of color in the space program. We can't, oh my God, what are you doing hiring these people? Like, but then there's a character that's standing up and saying, no, we're doing this. This is important.
Yeah.
And
having the party behind that can be an interesting take on that. So that's something that everybody's fighting for. Like, 100%. If you have anyone in your party who's also perpetuating the oppression, that's bullshit. And do not allow that. Like, I don't care if it's normal. That's going to make it fucking terrible. And don't let anybody do that. Like, everybody in your party at least has to be a feminist. Their characters. Like, I don't care. Like, none of that, like... Yeah, that's bullshit if like other people in her group are, you shouldn't be doing that, honey. It's like, that's not fun. That's not fun to ever play that, ever. Don't let that happen. But I love the idea if it's going to be in society that we're all fighting against it as a collective.
Yeah. So like the characters that are part of dealing with it, like, okay, yeah, this bad stuff's out there. We know that it exists in the world. Now we're going to make choices that advance these causes
Right.
Yeah.
to make things better for everybody,
Yeah.
right? Like that's
Mhm.
an interesting story and a fun story and an empowering story.
Mhm.
It's great.
Yeah.
And like from a GM perspective, you can still play an asshole, right? Like the party
The
can then
GM, the
deal
GM
with you.
can.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they can deal with like
That's so hard though.
I mean it is. It like the example that comes to mind is in my Burning Bright game, I play this really jerk ass a club owner that has absolutely infuriated Joey. Like IRL.
Mhm.
Right? Like he just seethes with anger at this club owner. And every time I have to be there've been lots of NPCs that I've had to play that are kind of ooky.
Yeah.
Like they're not the people that I want to be, but like it's important to tell this story.
Mhm.
And again, I try and frame it in that angle of this is a bad person.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's
And
it's
the party is working against this.
yeah. Because it's Blade Runner, so it's like replicants, and some people are prejudiced against
Mhm.
replicants and stuff like that. For
Yeah.
people who might not know what Burning Bright is, just
Yeah.
Fair
some
enough.
Kirk.
If you don't,
Context.
go watch it.
Go watch it. It's really good.
Uh,
Yeah.
Following up on what Kurt said, a rabbit hole you may not want to go down is Mary Wollstonecraft, who is considered the proto feminist of the Western world. There's lots of feminist writings going all the way back to the Hebrews and the Egyptians, but of the modern age, Mary Wollstonecraft is one of those people who was absolutely an exception in the 1750s, who's like writing and saying, women need to be educated and they should not get married because marriage is like pretty much too close to being property. And Abigail Adams is actually a big fan of Mary Wollstonecraft and notoriously tells her husband, John, don't forget the women, when he goes to write the Constitution and forget the women.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but yeah. I mean, in the 1700s, I mean, it wasn't worded as being property, but you're pretty much property.
And,
Yeah.
I just, along with the lines of what Dave was saying, just be careful. I know there's this notion, I take it from what you said in the World War II game, you like people learning about the period. Just be careful that you're not actually trying to get to modern day
Mhm.
as we have it today, because you're going to have to really undo everything the characters are doing that is obviously going to break history because they weren't there.
Well, I mean, like you brought up Bridgerton earlier, and like it's kind of a you're right, bodice rippy show. There's a lot of it's not historically accurate in a lot of ways, but it's a good example of it is a period show.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the things about the stories are very period, like the way you'd have to do marriages and the way you have to do like going to parties to be introduced to someone, to make an arranged
Right.
marriage. So a lot of those facts and the struggles of different people to wed or be married by a certain time, how you'd introduce, how you'd meet people in an
Mhm.
acceptable way if you were in a high society, in the Regency era and stuff like that, is all stuff is pretty accurate. Like, no, they didn't go like fuck in the garden like they do in the show, because oh my god, if you did that, then you, wow. I mean, they probably did, but
100%.
100%.
I'm
But-
like,
Yeah.
They
really?
didn't even have
Really?
television.
Yeah, I know.
There's no Netflix in the chill. It's
But
just all chill.
They probably wouldn't do it with like the queen and their mom like less than like 100 yards away. That probably would happen less. But like the ideas that like people are, like Mo was saying, are upset about race, but that doesn't change the stories at all. You can still tell incredibly
Right.
compelling stories with people at different like socioeconomic levels of class
Mhm.
struggling with that have nothing to do with race, that are still incredibly compelling and period appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So you can teach a ton about the period and not worry about the racial element and things like that. And same thing with like the misogyny. You can have these people struggling against vampires and werewolves and all this other weird ass shit, you know, while they're trying to not be noticed,
Right.
you know, and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in a society where, you know, it's hard, you have to get from one place to the other. You can't just get in a car. How do you get on a horse or whatever it is?
Catch a carriage.
Yeah, there's plenty of challenges provided by the era
Right.
without focusing on the misogyny and the racism that is going to make players at your table feel really uncomfortable. And you can have them run into Queen Victoria or Prince Albert in a realistic way or whatever. Like, you can teach them tons about that period without, like, focusing on that, which they all know is there. Like, that's not a thing that they need to experience or play in to learn a ton about the era.
Yeah.
There's an interesting movie called Belle that's based on a true story about a woman whose uncle sends for her to come from the islands, and she's a black woman in British high society, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. Sounds interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely a thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Well, and
oh, go ahead, Kurt.
I was just going to say, Rippers specifically is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Like, you
Yeah.
Right.
are people with exceptional abilities or some sort of weird otherness that allows you to go on and fight these monsters and deal with the weird problems that exist. You're probably not going to be the meek housemaid. I just don't, you know what I mean? Like, these characters are heroic characters generally in that type of story. So
Yeah, absolutely.
give them opportunities to overcome that oppression, and don't push those themes on the player, push them on the character.
Yeah. I mean, Mina in that time period from League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, like, if I was a vampire nowadays, like, that would be the first thing I'd do with my charm ability, is, like, get rid of the misogyny with everyone who walked by me. Just like,
Yeah.
look at me. Women are fucking amazing, and you just, like, love everything we say. Okay, now we can have our conversation.
Right,
Go.
right.
Like, boom. Like, yeah.
Another example, even closer to this time period you're talking about, the Gilded Age on HBO. Well,
Yeah.
Max,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
it's totally about a period where there's still all kinds of terrible problems for all kinds of groups, and arranged marriage and all of that is still going on. But, like, they have characters that are struggling with these problems, and they're portrayed from the perspective of, oh yeah, that's the right thing to do. Like, let's go.
Right.
Like, that's a story that's okay to tell.
Yeah.
Right? Like, bad things can exist in the world without the characters having to perpetuate them.
Yes.
Correct.
Like,
Like,
dwell in them.
yeah.
And
And, you know, give the characters a chance to do something about it. Yeah.
And not be stereotypes. That's the other thing I really love about
Yeah.
the Gilded Age is, like, it's so much media tells us, like, oh, these helpless women in this age, or oh, these, you know, this poor black person who used to be a slave. It's like, no, they have characters like the now emancipated slave owns a newspaper and
Right.
is running a newspaper, and he has a staff of amazing educated people who are working to make the schools in New York City better for the black children there, and they're
Yep.
working to make them they're bringing in white children too, so that they'll get money from the city, because right now, so there's all these historical amazing things that are accurate to the time period, and a lot of the characters they pull in those stories are historical characters, in a way that's, like, changing it. Like, it would be super easy to flip that story and be like, oh, these impoverished children going to these, but instead they tell it from the empowered side. So these people who are, like, making the change, who are also, there's always that side of the story. So have that, and these women are, like, running society. Is like, yes, all their husbands are, like, the big Rockefeller type characters, but they're the ones who are arranging the marriages and introducing everyone to everyone and kind of controlling the social aspect. And that's the attitude of that show, which I am so excited, because as soon as we're done recording tonight, I get to go watch the new episode that posts
Look
on
at
Sunday
that.
nights. That's my after podcast.
Your
It's like-
after show.
Yeah, my after show.
I'm behind a couple episodes.
Yeah, no, I love it. Super trashy costume drama, and sometimes they have zippers, and it makes me angry. Every once in a while, literally, I was watching the other day, and I stopped. I was like, oh, Sam was like, "Is there another zipper?" I was like, "Yes." They tried to hide it, but it's right down the back. That's ridiculous.
See,
And
I think Ken is worried about the zippers.
It's-
Like I think there's probably
That's it.
something in this period
Yeah.
that he's like, but this is real.
Do not. If you have zippers, I'm gonna be really angry. Ken. Don't mess with that.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
This is a historically accurate game.
Yeah.
You button your buttons.
Yeah.
This is the height of technology.
And pull up your hoses.
Lacing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that is important. I mean, if you're a freaking HBO, like you can afford to not have a zipper in your dress.
But you
Oh
can't
know.
afford to
They're-
have a
they're-
Starbucks cup in Game of Thrones, so
my God, that's true.
They're laying out cash already. There's got to be a limit,
That's
right?
true.
Like,
That's true. Okay.
just to get the locations,
Yeah.
they're paying.
But yeah. Anyway, I think we made our point. But update us, Ken. I'm interested to see what happens.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
yeah. All right. Next one. This is gonna be an episode for the books, man. Back to the old days,
Bringing
the
it back.
long episodes.
I can't not. I'm sorry.
It's fine. All right, mailbag number 2. I'm glad I only decided to go with 2 emails for this one since we did the sharing, but that was fun. Greetings.
Should I read this one so we can confuse the listeners?
Oh, yeah, do it.
Okay. Greetings, fellow jackers, jackettes, and jackoffs. Rather than appearing on the show myself, I've decided to write in. Contrary to prevailing opinion about me, I'll keep this short so you can spend the time answering my question rather than reading my drivel. How do you shut off GM brain? For those who GM a lot, how do you sit as a player and ignore that part of your brain that is telling you how you would approach each scenario from a GM perspective? Seriously, I need to know. I need advice on this. Kurt. Clan Hannah on the interwebs and occasionally on Discord. P.S. Imbibe.
Woo!
Thanks, Kurt.
thanks for reading Kurt's
Thanks, Kurt.
email, Kurt.
Yeah. You did a great job being a Kurt.
Hey, it's my whole shtick.
All right. So how do you turn off GM brain?
Design games.
Yeah.
I hope we come to an answer because I was struggling with it literally today.
Yeah.
My wife and I, I've been playing a lot of D&D, and so I've been running a D&D game, and periodically my wife will run sort of a off session for all the characters to go and like explore their backstories that's not part of the kind of main plot that's going on.
Like a downtime?
And yeah, like downtime. Exactly. We were like, D&D needs downtime. We're going to put it in. So I'm sitting there, I'm playing my character, and about halfway through the session, we're going to transition back to me GMing, and she's handing out magic items to all the players. I'm like, no, they don't get that one. Because it's about to come back to me. So yeah, the whole time I'm like having the hardest time trying not to GM from the player seat.
Yeah. It's hard. My go-to usually when I find myself trying to like guess what the GM did, like as the GM, is like I'll try and throw the spotlight to another player. That's like my first go-to is like, well, what do you think we should do, so and so? And then I take the pressure off of me and put it on them, and then they have to solve the problem, and I don't have to do it anymore.
That's a pretty good solution.
I
honestly.
tend to do that a lot
That's
if I'm
terrible.
playing a character that's not that smart.
Oh yeah.
Because I'll sit there and I'll see what's kind of laid out in front of me, and I'll be like, I think this is where it's heading, and I'll be like, I don't know what to do. Someone else help me. Like, yeah. I don't think I ever turn off my GM brain.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of the same way I look at all kinds of stuff. Like, if life was a TV show or a movie, or you're just kind of watching stuff happen around you, and weird shit happens sometimes, and you'll just be like, I'm going to tuck that one away.
Right?
'Cause
Right?
At some point,
Yeah.
I'm going to be playing a game, and you're going to want somebody to get off a bus that's just screaming about black holes.
Mhm.
100% legitimate thing that happened when I was coming out of Walgreens pharmacy. I'm stepping out, and this person gets off the bus just going, "Black holes, man, black holes." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a good one. Like, that's coming back." So, yeah.
I think this is when you're a player and not a GM, and yeah, it's a hard one because the first instinct is to go deeper into character,
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
but this is all going on in your head because either you're not getting spotlight or you're getting a little judgy. Maybe you have opinions. I don't know if you guys notice. Sometimes I have opinions.
What?
On this podcast, what?
You have opinions? No one told me.
And so, you know, I have a list of things not to do.
Mhm.
Try not to get on my phone.
Mm.
Don't tell people what to do.
Yeah, I think
Like
that's
don't try to like meta for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, just my word these days has been gratitude.
Mhm.
You know, try to enjoy the communal space you're having with friends or people who can be friends.
Yeah.
And
I think what you're saying about not telling people what to do is important.
Super
Like,
critical.
Yeah, as a GM, like
Mhm.
it's super. Like that meta game level, but also that like want to like you're so used to like hurting everybody as a GM, like trying to get everybody to go on the same thing. As a player, you need to like, well, yes, that's part of a player's job is to like collaborate. Like you're not supposed to hurt everybody as a player. So not being like, well, maybe you should do this, and maybe you should do this, and maybe you should do like even if you're in character, that's like my in character voice, blah blah blah. But yeah, that's super key. I didn't think about that part. Yeah.
but sometimes it's just not your time for spotlight.
Yeah.
And it might be going on a little long.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that's the way the dice roll sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And that can be hard, especially as a GM, because like you think you know what's happening, and you're like, why don't they see it? Or maybe they do see it, but yeah, it's super frustrating. And I think I don't know if it's ever something you can completely turn off. I kind of agree, but you have to know how not to voice it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I feel like
Inside
it's like,
voice.
Yeah,
Inside voice.
inside voice.
Keep
Inside
your
voice.
damn mouth shut.
Yeah. It's like, I think it's like me when I'm teaching or like when I'm with my kid. And it's like, I'm thinking in my head, what the actual fuck? But I'm not going to say that. Like,
Code switching.
yeah.
Super
there
important.
There you go. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
like you can't stop GM You have to code switch to player language. I think that's the best way of doing it. I don't think there's another way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Kurt.
So-
Sorry, Kurt and Kurt.
So, no answers for Kurtz. I think okay. So if I could go back to today and redo my day, I think the issues that I ran into were, like you mentioned, trying to envision how I would have approached a scenario. Some of that is just your side seat GMing, right? Just allow yourself to be surprised. It's kind of like watching a mystery movie and just trying not to figure it out so you can be surprised at the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
So like focusing on enjoying the story that's being presented to you, the stimulus that's being presented to you, instead of trying to shape it. This is also more of an issue in games that have a really well-defined GM player delineation.
Yeah.
Trad games specifically are going to be really tough with this. But just if you think a scene could have gone differently, try to put that into how your character could modify. Like, what can your character accomplish to make the scene do that? So, and what, like, if it was their idea, I wish this had gone that way. What levers do they have to pull from your character's perspective to try and get the world to be the way they want it to be? And just have a bossy character, I guess.
or maybe.
Or just don't. Like, just,
Yeah.
you get on that log flume and you sit there, and
Right.
you might be the world log flume expert.
Right.
You've been on so many, you have designed them, but at the same time, you're gonna get in this thing, and you can't get out. You're buckled in.
Yep.
So just see where it goes.
Yeah.
Enjoy the ride.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And don't say fuck in front of your students.
Right. Code switching.
Yeah,
I can swear like a sailor here.
Oh man.
I get home.
the whole
Yeah.
type of
The
game.
part that weirds me out is I'm better at it than my wife, who is very, very well educated on doing that stuff.
Because she has to do it all day.
Sure, but
The veil grows very thin. Like I cuss in
Mhm.
front of my kid more than my husband does, and he's like, "You do this all day?" I'm like, "Yes, I do it all day."
all day.
Like,
I
Yeah.
need a break.
I'm exhausted.
I'm exhausted of like keeping this like veneer of this like calm, patient adult. It's just like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be one.
yeah. My daughter
Do
like
you know how many times I didn't say fuck to a 12-year-old today?
so many times.
I'm doing great.
I'm doing so great. So when that asshole cuts me off, I'm gonna say fuck, even if my kid's in the car seat. Like, just gonna be a thing. Just teach her not to say it. It's fine.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That. Yeah.
All right. Are we spent?
Did we
Man.
do it?
We did
I think
it.
so.
Yeah.
All right.
My only last note is it's always great to have a pencil and a piece of paper and, just start writing.
Oh, I thought we were gonna be like and
Mhm.
stab people.
I
Roll the paper up real tight,
Real
just
tight.
jam it in their mouth.
I haven't
Back
stabbed
in with it.
anybody in an RPG session in many, many decades. Oh.
Good, okay. Newspaper. And then if they're sitting next to you, not. No, bad. Go the other way. Don't you see?
Looks like
Obviously,
you're hitting
it's-
me.
It does. I know.
I don't think.
That hurts.
Oh,
That
stop,
hurts.
please. Oh, no, sorry. Stop, please. I don't want.
All right. All right, we're getting punchy.
It's reversed for me. It's so confusing.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for season 33, episode 3 of the Happy Jacks RPG podcast. Please support our amazing indie designer of the month, Kurt Potts. I
Kurt,
was just
Kurt.
virtually meeting. You can find his amazing games at Kurt Potts. That's KURTPOTTS.itch.io and at lighthearted.games. Thank you to our chat mod, James V, and to all our amazing Patreons who keep us ad-free and independent. You can join their amazing ranks at happyjacks.org/Patreon and see all the cool rewards and stuff that they get for supporting us. My name is Kimmy.
I'm Kurt.
I'm Kadave.
And I'm Mo.
And today we're going to leave you with a song called The Gloucestershire Wassail. Do you have a thing?
Just real quick.
Okay.
I saw some people in the chat asking about my shirt. It's from a company called Roosevelt's, but if you take out all of the vowels, like RSVLTS.
Like Cyberpunk?
Yeah, exactly. It's that's where I get almost all of my nerdy shirts. This is in particular the Clint Eastwood Back to the Future Western shirt. So yeah, you can they have almost every nerdy movie or genre. I've gotten shirts from They Live and Star Wars and just all kinds of shit in patterns and bright colors. And yeah, they're great. They're great shirts. That's my endorsement.
Awesome. All right, so today we're going to leave you with a song called The Gloucestershire Wassail by a group called the Merry Wives of Windsor. You can find them at mwow.net. So yeah, one more episode before Christmas. Yay!
Good
Super
golly.
fun for those of you who celebrate. And I have so much work to do. Okay. All right, thanks everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye.
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 Wassail, wassail all over the town. Our toast it is white and our ale it is brown. Our bowl it is made of the white maple tree. With a wassailing bowl we'll drink to And here is to Dobbin and to his right eye, great gods and our master, a good Christmas pie, a good Christmas pie that may we all see. With a wasp-sailing bowl we'll drink to thee. And here is to Broadway and to her broad horn, may God send our master a good crop of corn, and a good crop of corn that may we all see. With a wasp-sailing bowl we'll drink to thee. And here is to Cherry and to his right cheek, pray God send our master a good piece of beef, and a good piece of beef that may we all see. With a wasp-sailing bowl we'll drink to thee. And here is to Phil Pale and to her left ear, pray God send our master a happy new year, and a happy new year as e'er he did see. With a wasp-sailing bowl we'll drink to thee. Come butler, come fill us a bowl of the best, and we hope that your soul in heaven may rest. But if you do draw us a bowl of the small, then down shall go butler, bowl and all.